My name is Charlotte Harris, and I'm Head of Front-End Innovation, or FEI for short, at Team. For those of you who may not know what we mean by FEI, it is sometimes known as the fuzzy front end and refers to the creative beginning of the innovation process that determines the success of the product development and implementation. Now, I'm an engineer by training, and I've worked in medical devices all of my career, which is about 25 years now. I've been at Team for nearly 12 years, and there I run a team of strategy and innovation specialists. And together we're focused on front-end innovation, which in our process is the phases of product development where we are undertaking strategic innovation and product definition activities to make sure we are defining the right product in the early stages of development. So this is Team's product development process. And when I'm talking about front-end innovation, I'm referring to the discover and the define phases of the development process. This is before the design is set and before entering design controls and spans strategic innovation and planning and ideation activities. So why bother investing in this early phase? The cost of change dramatically increases the further you go along the development process. Once you are in the develop and deliver stage, the design may be fixed and you're paying out for expensive tools, etc. To try and make changes at this point is extremely difficult and very costly. In comparison, the discover and define phases are very creative and less structured. So it's worth spending a bit of money and effort on getting it right in the early stages while things are still agile and the cost of change is much lower. Another reason to invest in the early stages can be demonstrated by this recent report from Deloitte. So a few years ago, Deloitte and AdvaMed conducted a benchmarking analysis of data from 20 medtech company business units. And this research found that companies with the highest new product revenue contribution focus more on transformational products and invest in upfront market understanding and technology exploration. And that companies that successfully meet new product development predictability metrics focus more on upfront technology development and external collaboration. And the summary of this report, I think, is spot on. They mention here that innovation and product development is costly, but when organizations get it right, it does more than generate returns on that investment. A strong innovation and product development strategy can help medtech companies drive greater market share and offer value to patients and customers. But the key is delivering the right products to the market at the right time. So that's what we're trying to do in these early phases. We're trying to set off on the path to making sure we are developing the right product at the right time. And it's all about balance. To be a successful innovation, a product has to be desirable and solve a real need and be a benefit and add benefit for the patient. It also has to be technically feasible. And ultimately, you also need to make some money out of it. So what we're trying to do in these early stages is make sure that we understand the opportunities and constraints in each of those areas and consider them all in balance, so that we don't end up with something that is technically excellent, but no one wants it, and it will take so long to develop that you'll miss your spot in the market. So I just wanted to share an example of where innovation can go wrong when you don't think about that balance that I just explained. One of Silicon Valley's most infamous recent failures is Juicero. The startup received $120 million in venture capital investment, but then proceeded to go bankrupt within 3 years. The Juicero Press was a Wi-Fi connected device that sat on your kitchen counter and made delicious fruit and vegetable juices on demand. It used proprietary single-serving packets of pre-juiced fruits and vegetables sold exclusively by the company by subscription. The machine sold for nearly $700, which was later lowered to about $500, and the juice packets sold for about $5 a piece. Each pack had a QR code on it, and the machine wouldn't work unless it could scan the QR code and connect to the internet to validate the packet code. The company thought that people love fresh fruit and vegetable smoothies, and they were sure to love the convenience of a machine like this in their own home. Plus, this was certainly to be a high profitable business model, since the high margin packets were required in order to use the machine and could only be bought from the company. But basically, it failed miserably. The machine was too expensive and it was too unreliable, and it couldn't be used for anything else. So, for example, there was no way that anyone could press your own fruit or vegetables, for example. And then the final blow came when Bloomberg ran an article pointing out that the machine itself was actually completely unnecessary. You could just buy the juice packets and squeeze them out by hand, yielding exactly the same result. So the company shut down in 2017, just 17 months after launching, and after having had $120 million invested in investor capital, and that had been flushed down the toilet. So the problem was that they had an expensive solution to a problem that no one really had. What customers really wanted and continue to buy today is juicers that you can toss your own fruit and vegetables into and no internet connection required. So had they spent a little bit more time upfront working out what users wanted and considering the user technical and commercial elements in more balance, then maybe things might have been a bit different. So now let's talk about the right product at the right time. I'm going to walk you through this process using a case study as an example. This was a project we did for a client a couple of years ago where they came to us and said, we can formulate our new drug either as a powder formulation or a liquid formulation. Can you help us decide which one we should do? So with this powder or liquid project, we were starting off here, right at the very start of the discover phase. The first activities we did right at the very beginning were to try and establish alignment and consensus from our client group as to where they were currently and what they were trying to achieve. And this is where it's important to bring in that multidisciplinary team, as it's important to understand the point of view of everyone that is going to be involved in the development, whether that's R&D, formulation, regulatory, commercial, marketing or program management. If you don't involve everyone from the start, then you might end up going off down a very technical route, for example, only to find out that from the regulatory person that you need to submit to the FDA in a much shorter time frame, or from the program manager that you needed to have finalised your device choice in 6 months' time. All this harks back to the 3 rings and to getting a balance between the user, technical and commercial opportunities and constraints. So on our powder and liquid project, we went about this through organising a large face-to-face multidisciplinary workshop. But prior to that, we ran some pre-interviews with key stakeholders. We interviewed someone from R&D, someone from regulatory, someone from commercial, someone from marketing and someone from formulation. The purpose of these interviews was to firstly gain some engagement for the bigger workshop, but also to find out where they currently were on the powder or liquid debate, and what information did they think they were missing to enable them to make this decision. Then we asked them what information they could bring to the workshop which would help inform others. All of this helped to inform the workshop structure and preparation. The workshop itself was attended by 20 different people from different areas of the client business and ran for a full day. In this workshop, one of the first activities was to find from the wider group what their aspirations, objectives and barriers were with the project. We got them to do this individually so that we were able to understand the different perspectives without them all saying what this person before had said. We also got them individually to say where they sat currently on the powder or liquid debate. These 2 activities helped us to establish the starting point we were at and to set our end goals of what we were trying to achieve. The next thing we did was to share knowledge and establish gaps. We did this by asking various people to share knowledge that they have that might be relevant. In the powder or liquid project, this was about the commercial and clinical teams sharing what they knew about the patients. It was the formulation team sharing where they had got to in the formulation development of both a powder and a liquid. It was about teams sharing some insights about the delivery device landscape and the different classes of device that might be suitable for delivery of either formulation. And it was about the regulatory specialists sharing the strategy and when device choices need to be submitted to the regulators. Then it was about the program manager sharing the project timelines, what they were, including dates for clinical trials and target launch. And all of this information helped to bring everyone up to a similar level of understanding and to more easily capture what was known and where there were gaps. In this project, it became clear from the workshop that there were gaps in knowledge around technologies available for delivering the liquid formulation. And there were also gaps in an understanding of what the users would think about each of the formulations. So as I said, one of the gaps in knowledge was that it became clear the client didn't know much about liquid delivery devices and what was potentially available to deliver the formulations. So we spent a chunk of time in the workshop defining and prioritising those requirements for the device that were known at that time. Back to our balance again, that included not just technical performance requirements, but also capturing user-specific requirements and other commercial and regulatory requirements, such as timelines to clinical trials, for example. So by the time we completed this workshop, we had understood from our diverse team where they were currently, what they were trying to achieve, what they knew and where there were gaps, and the prioritised requirements for a delivery device to deliver the formulations so that we could go away and try to identify technologies that could do that. So now we are here in the discover phase properly. As I mentioned, our workshop helped us to identify gaps across the user technical and commercial rings. And we needed to make sure that we'd filled those gaps, whether that was us as team completing the research or whether it was being handled by the client. This slide shows some examples of some of the things that we were tackling. From a user perspective, it became clear that we did not know what it was like to live with this respiratory condition or what formulation and technology might work best for the patients. So team put together a program of research to uncover this. Similarly, it became clear that it was not known what devices were available for delivering the formulation and how these might score against the client's desired requirements. So again, team put together a program of work to understand this. From a formulation perspective, the client was looking into which of these potentially performs best and could be developed most efficiently. And then from a commercial perspective, the client was needed to understand which regulatory pathway they were going to follow and whether one formulation or another offered more competitive differentiation and which solutions best met their timescales. So the client was undertaking those research activities. As I mentioned, one of the tasks for us was to scout for device technologies that might be available to deliver each of the powder and liquid formulations. So we took the requirements we had defined in the workshop and undertook a structured process of scouting for suitable delivery technologies that would meet those requirements. We used a variety of different sources to find this information, such as expert knowledge, using our proprietary databases, and some of the contacts that you have in the industry to help us find out what's already on the market or still in development. And then we went through a process to assess each of those technologies we found against how well they met the requirements and made recommendations for which were the most suitable. As it was also clear from our workshop that we did not know what formulation or device choice the patients would prefer, we then undertook some exploratory research with patients which had two parts. The first was to understand from the patients what it was like to live with the respiratory condition so that we could make sure we recommended a device that would fit into their lives. The second part was to share with the participants a few of the top device choices that we had assessed to get their feedback on them. We used a program called Online Communities, which allowed people to dial into a platform and complete tasks each day over a period of a couple of weeks. Some of the tasks were, for example, take a video of yourself using your current medication. And other tasks were, watch this video of a new device and tell me what you think. Then in parallel, we had a community forum running in the background, which allowed us to pose questions about the participants' challenges and workarounds and comment on each other's. All this information allowed us to get some really rich insights into what it was like to be a patient. As we were doing the technical and user-focused research activities, our client was also looking into the commercial side of things and trying to make sure they really understood what their competition were doing and how they might be able to differentiate with one formulation over another. And they were also looking into their timescales for clinic and market and looking at how various development options fitted into those. Finally, whilst we were looking at all of this, the client was also continuing to work on the formulation development for both powder and liquid to see if any challenges arose. So after a period of a few months, while everyone was undertaking their various bits of research, we all got back together again to discuss what we had found out. This time it was a remote workshop, but with the same attendees as before. In preparation for this workshop, we had gathered the various bits of information and set about presenting this all in a way that was easy for the attendees to review and quickly make a decision on. So after this workshop, we had enabled the client to make a choice on which formulation to progress developing, to decide which device was best to deliver it, although it did have some potential usability challenges and needed modifying, and what design challenges we needed to answer in order to create a successful solution. So when I say design challenges, this is what I mean. Analysis of our research allows us to pick out solution agnostic problem statements, which we can then use to drive the ideation activities in the next phase. These can be technically focused, user focused, or commercially focused. Some example design challenges from this powder liquid project included: how might we ensure the drug is protected from the environment? Or how might we improve the usability of the delivery device? Or how might we ensure competitor differentiation? We can then ideate about these statements to ensure that we end up with a balanced solution. So back to our development process map. By this point in our powder liquid project, we have completed the discover phase. We know what formulation we are going to use, we know what device we are going to use, and we know what modifications it needs and the design challenges we need to address to make that balanced solution. So now we are taking our output from the discover phase and moving into our define phase of the process. This is where we know what we want to develop, but we don't yet know exactly what form this might take. So we're trying to work through a process to help define this. And this phase is all about rapid ideation. In our powder liquid project, we came out of the discover phase with a number of design challenges identified. Now we have to set about coming up with ideas to address them. For each of our design challenges, we created a range of different solutions. And it's about coming up with a broad range of ideas. In order for us to make sure we are coming up with a diverse range of solutions, we used a number of different creative stimulus designed to push the boundaries of our thinking and help us to come up with the non-obvious solutions. Some examples are random associations, where we use random images or objects or words to see if that prompts any different ideas. Scamper is a tool which prompts us to think about substituting or combining, or maybe adapting or modifying or putting to another use, eliminating or reversing our ideas. Analogous industries is where we look at things going on in other areas, say aerospace or food tech or retail, for example, to see if we can draw anything from that. Artificial constraints are where we start to impose constraints such as, what if you could only use one hand? Or what if you couldn't see? Or what would Einstein do? To see if those bring up any new ideas. So all these techniques can be used to make sure we are coming up with a diverse range of ideas to our design challenges. Then what we do with these lots of broad ideas we've come up with then is to filter out the obvious rubbish and then arrange them in a morphological box matrix, where ideas which meet each design challenges are arranged in a structured way. Doing this means we can then pick different routes through this matrix to create a range of embodiments which meet combinations of our design challenges. This enables us to deliberately pull together a diverse range of embodiments, either perhaps ranging from mild to wild, where we pick embodiments which span a range of low to high levels of change. Alternatively, we can deliberately create embodiments which sit around a theme. For example, if we thought about which combination of ideas would make the most convenient solution, what would we put together? Or if we tried to make the most sustainable solution, what would it look like? So at this stage, it's much less about picking the best concept, but more about using these embodiments as vehicles for discussion to get feedback on what is important to people. So once we have our range of embodiments, we want to try and gain some confidence and evidence in their feasibility. We call this reasons to believe, as we're not trying to completely design and prove out all the technical challenges. It's quick and dirty, and it's about identifying what might be those showstopper technical challenges for each of the embodiments, and then doing some basic modeling or doing some calculations or some more literature research, for example. We need to do whatever is needed to gain a bit more confidence in our ideas, so that if we are going to fail, it happens now, earlier on, and not after we've spent a load of time and effort developing something. This is all about killing things that need to be killed and only progressing those ideas which show merit. Another way to gain confidence in the embodiments is to put them in the hands of users and get some feedback. So we can use this to understand, for example, what's important to them. Is convenience more important to them than sustainability, for example? Or what do they think about particular features of each of the embodiments? And what might an ideal solution look like to them? For our powder liquid project, we knew there were some potential usability challenges with the device that was selected. And so by using basic imagery and basic mock-up models, we were able to very quickly get some feedback on our ideas. By getting user feedback on ideas early on, before we've gone too far, we can ensure that our ideas are informed by the user's desires and responses and ultimately may have a better chance of being successful. And then we want to do that process multiple times over. As I said right at the start, the cost of change is much higher the further you go through the development process. So we want to go through an iterative process to help us define the right product early on. So we want to go through an iterative process of design, prototype and test, each time not spending lots of effort on designing the ultimate solution, but each time we are refining the ideas and gaining more and more confidence in them. So by the time we've completed the define phase, we have been through an iterative process and gained confidence and have reasons to believe in 1 to 2 concepts that can then be taken into further development and proof of principle. So let's summarize what we've talked about today. To recap on the points of this presentation, bringing the right product to market at the right time is key to innovation success. Taking time to define the right product in the early stages of development will save costly changes later on. And having a consideration of balance between user desirability, technical feasibility, and commercial viability will enhance your chances of success. Once you start a program, gaining alignment and consensus at the start will help you set off on the right path. And thorough research will help identify the opportunities and challenges. And finally, an iterative program of create, prototype and test will provide reasons to believe and confidence in the right solutions.
So the first question I have is, how do you address ballooning teams when there's a shiny new innovation / exploration program and everyone wants to be involved?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Jack, and hi, everybody. Yes, I think to answer that, I mean, we find certainly a lot of our client teams designate a core team or a leader really to kind of drive and who's going to lead that innovation program. But as I talked about in my talk, I think, we think it's very important actually to get a wide, diverse group of people involved at various points along that process. We find that, I talked about a workshop at the beginning there, and that's a very good opportunity to get that wider, more interested group of people involved for a short period of time. They can have their say, they can get their inputs, they can get their requirements out. And that workshop as well can be an opportunity to share knowledge and identify knowledge gaps and agree action plans for who's going to do what next as well. So if they can be involved in that, but then realize that maybe their job is not, they're not needed to do a certain action or something, but they might then be brought back at a later point to get together and discuss findings or results or whatever. We've found that sort of approach works quite well to allow people who want to be involved at certain points and still feel like they have an input, but be able to have a kind of core team to lead and direct the activities that need to be done. But to iterate, I think it's very important that actually you do get a wide, diverse team to keep that balance between the user, technical, commercial, so you don't end up going too far down a technical route and forgetting about the user or your timelines or whatever it might be. So hopefully that helps answer your question. That's a setup we often see happening with our clients and what seems to work quite well.
So, thanks for that, Charlotte. So another question we have is, they've said they are curious how you might adapt your processes when the client is already partway into their device development process.
Yes, yeah. So we often get clients who come to us actually and say, I've got an idea for something, a new device, or I know I want to design a new product, let's say a reusable auto injector or for something, but they don't know what the format of that should be or what kind of how that product should be. So what we often try and do then is, we're not starting from scratch because we've already got some ideas on the table, but it's about trying to understand at that point, is our client comfortable and happy that they understand the needs of the target users, and where they're going to add some benefit and make a difference. And do understand, are they happy with the technology that they perhaps might be wanting to use? Do they know what they want to do? Do they know how they're going to compete in the market they're trying to get into? Do they know what markets they want to get into? Do they understand the regulatory pathway that they need to follow, etc.? And if the answer is yes to all of those, then brilliant. We'll pick up from where where the client's got to, and kind of just maybe there's early concepts, and we'll pick that on and start evolving them. But making sure that we're understanding all the aspirations, etc. But if the answer is no to some of those questions, then we might backtrack a little bit, and to make sure that we do go back and do research that might be needed to fill some of those knowledge gaps, to help set direction a little bit with the product, and also help us define what that product needs to be. So it's a bit of a case by case scenario set up, really, but ultimately we want to make sure we are going forwards keeping a balanced solution in mind. So it will depend on what the client comes to us with and what they're confident and know so far.
Thanks for that. So we probably have time for just one more question. So someone has asked, with regards to accessibility, at what point are end users brought back in to test these iterative prototypes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we believe in, and hopefully that came across in the presentation, that we believe in involving the users, from the very beginning and at multiple points throughout the early stages. We try and involve them right at the very start, when we don't even know really what it is we're defining, what the kind of format of our product should be, and that's really to make sure we understand what it's like to be that user, and what their challenges and their unmet needs are, to make sure we're designing a solution that incorporates those and adds value and benefits. But then once we've got some early ideas, it's then about getting them in front of users as early as possible, and as many times as possible. And each time we're iterating our designs, we're aiming to learn from our users and get input, which will help us inform how these designs should evolve. And very early on, we might start with just sketches. And often, as I described in my talk, sometimes these are sketches of embodiments that are deliberately designed to provoke some sort of thinking or conversation. They're sort of vehicles for discussion. And that helps us kind of understand what's important to our users. And then as our designs evolve, maybe we then might have some basic handling models, or something that we perhaps are supported by some visual stimulus in the next round. And maybe the next round we might have some semi-functioning elements or something we want to test. But it's about each iteration trying to get some feedback from users to help inform what we should do next. And it doesn't need to involve a whole load of people each time. It can be a small number of people, and you can get some really rich insights and useful information from just small numbers of people. But I think what's key is making sure it's an iterative process. We're getting feedback at each point, and we don't go too far developing some ideas before we've got feedback from users, so that we've got that, keeping with that balance approach.